Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com, here with a new video series we're going to call What's in the Box? What's in the box? Is it a puppy? It is not a puppy. What's in the box? This is going to showcase a deck from our Pauper Battle Box. Battle Box right here. Boom, boom. We have, I believe, 32 decks, and today I'm going to showcase my most latest deck in the Pauper Battle Box. You can get a look at our Pauper Battle Box there. This one is called What the Muck. That is the name that I've given it. I don't know. I keep deciding to call this deck either What the Muck or Muck It Up. I don't know, or Muck 'em Up, something like that. This is, we're not even going to open this deck because we already have it out here, laid out. This is a deck that utilizes the Bubbling Muck. This card right here. Now I have to turn your card side, or your head sideways as I do that. Bubbling Muck is a 1-mana spell. This is basically High Tide for black. It is High Tide for black. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps the swamp for mana, produce an additional black. Apologize for a little bit of shakiness. You should use my cell phone for this video. The future videos hopefully will be a little bit more high quality. So, basically Bubbling Muck is trying to get a lot of swamps out, and then we are going to produce a ton of black mana for our finishers. Our finishers in this particular deck are going to be Liliana Shade, one of the more powerful common creatures as it's a pumpable common card, and the Consume Spirit. Consume Spirit really puts me back to some nostalgia. That's Liliana Shade as well. Consume Spirit. Consume Spirit puts me back to the early days of Magic for me, because one of my first competitive decks, at least that I used to take to tournaments, was back during Torment, I think, and it was a mono-black control, and I believe it did use Consume Spirit as a win condition back then. It's very similar, but I think it tried to use Cobble Coffers back then to try to generate a ton of mana. So Consume Spirit, you can only spend add black mana, and then deals X damage to target creature player, and you gain X life. So that is the combination we're going to try to find, is a big Bubbling Muck. Sometimes you can even cast multiple Bubbling Mucks in a turn, and then finishing them off with a big Consume Spirit, or, of course, pumping up a Liliana Shade. So this is a control deck. We're not running a lot of creatures. In fact, Liliana Shade is the only creature in this deck. I've seen some other lists of Bubbling Muck running around, and I hate all of them. I think they're all poorly built, and I think this is a nice little list that I've been able to come up with. So, of course, we're going to run the 4 Bubbling Mucks. Then we're going to run the creature removal package, because creatures are still the majority of the meta in Pauper. So we're going to run 3 Disfigures. Or 4 Disfigures, excuse me. Disfigure is 1 mana to give something -2/-2. We are going to run the 1 of Tragic Slip to give us even more added kill versus early Delver decks. Kills most of the things in that deck, and of course, when the Morbid's turned on, it kills anything in Pauper. The 4 of Chainer Edicts, and I apologize, I ran out of old school Chainer Edicts here from Torment, so I had to use these god-awful ugly Chainer's Edicts from the Vaults 20. Basically, this is one of the more powerful cards in Pauper. It's a 2-for-1, 2 mana target player sacks a creature, and flashback for 7. You can cast it back. Alright, so that's kind of the creature removal package. We'll finish it off with 2 Victim of Nights. And I think it's the premier. I like Victim Knight over Doomblade. I think it kills a few more potential cards like Thorn of the Black Rose, out of black, Chittering Rats, things like that. Whereas the Destroy Target non-vampire, non-werewolf, non-zombie still doesn't hit like Gurmag Angler, but it does a little more, in my opinion, than Doomblade does. So Victim of Night is going to be our go-to spot removal, with a 1 of Echoing Decay does well against tokens, as well as like if anything has multiple of the same card out. A lot of Pauper decks do run 4 of particular cards. Then the next, this is a control deck that needs draw. We're actually going to run 8 cards here. We're going to run Night Whisper ×4. You draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. And we are going to run Sign of Blood ×4. Sign of Bloods can be used to finish off your opponent. It has actually happened before, because if you didn't perfectly get your opponent down with like a big Consume Spirit, you can top deck these cards to kind of finish them off. So that will keep us ahead of card advantage on our opponent. But all that life lost, how are we going to recoup it? Well, don't you fret. We have a package of Tendrils of Corruption and Corrupt. Tendrils of Corruption is actually super powerful in Pauper, as it deals X damage to target creature, and you gain X life for X number of swamps you control. This is going to put you back up if you've had to use all the damage spells through the Sign of Blood and Night Whispers. You're going to gain at least 4 life off of the Tendrils of Corruption, unless you had to use a Bubbling Muck to cast it. I don't think you should do that. However, if you don't, If it's just 4 or 5 or 6 swamps out, you're going to get a lot of life. That's going to stabilize you. And then we have the other version that can actually go direct to the face, which is Corrupt, as this has been printed as a common in the past. And Corrupt deals damage equal to the number of swamps you control to target creature player, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. All right, so then we've already talked about our finishers, where it's all about stalling until we find the Liliana Shade or the Consume Spirit. Both of those have, or the Consume Spirit as well, has been printed as a common in the history of Magic. Now, for the mana base, this is really complicated, really extremely complicated mana base. You have to find all swamps, basic swamps, that have this art of the Bubbling Muck. So you can see that it's bubbling back there. You got the bubbles, and it's got a dead dinosaur or something, right? Yeah, a little dead stegosaurus or something in the corner. This is the only acceptable swamp that you can use in this deck list. So you have to find it from either M10 or M11. If you don't, this deck is not legal, not tournament legal, and you will get an automatic disqualify if you try to enter it without these particular swamps. All right, let's move these on to the sideboard. Sideboard is very customizable in Pauper. Depends on the meta. Right now, I've kind of got it built more towards control meta. I'm going to run 4 Duresses in the sideboard. Still a really good card in Pauper. And 2 Distresses. So Distresses can just get anything out of the opponent's hand. Duress can get only non-creatures out of the opponent's hand. 2 Nihil Spellbombs. This will stop like Mold Drifters from being recouped from graveyards, Impulse and Marasa combos. Yeah, any of those type of things that use the graveyard to get cards back. The Nihil Spellbombs can do the job. Why this over the Relic of Progenitus? Well, I like drawing a card off the Nihil Spellbomb. Typically, I guess you do off the Relic. The Relic can work too in this deck. In fact, Relic might be the better target here. This one, black, though, by being able to draw a card off the Nihil Spellbomb is fine as well. But yeah, Relic of Progenitus, I don't believe we do use our graveyard, so it's probably... I think I was out of them. I think we've used a bazillion Relic of Progenitus, in this Pauper Battle Box. I didn't have any left to throw to this deck. But yeah, either Nihil Spellbomb or Relic is definitely fine. Speaking of Tron or Flicker decks where you do need to get rid of particular lands, the Rancid Earth does a good job. This is my favorite one that's available for land destruction, because if you do have Threshold met, which this deck does, it can also deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. There are decks that I will bring this in against that have a mix of both. You want to destroy particular lands and creatures. So Rancid Earth is just, in my opinion, just a little more superior than Choking Sands. Yeah, I think the Threshold's relevant. 1 damage to a player, 2 is relevant. I know Choking Sands, if it destroys a non-basic land, it does 2 damage, but again, I think Rancid Earth just gets the nod over it slightly. We have 2 more Victim of Nights, just if we really need to take care of particular creatures. I'll bring this in versus Affinity, is the main deck I bring it in versus, probably against Kudatha Boros as well. Some of those cards are bigger than the Disfigure, or Boros Monarch, actually. That's the correct terminology for the deck. So Victims is another nice little spot removal. And last but not least, we need sweeper control. So we have the Evincar's Justice, who deals 2 damage to each creature and player with buyback. This is another way you can kill your opponent. And if you're ahead on life with like Tendrils, you can buy this back and play it a couple times and just win the game that way. And then we have the card that does the same thing, but you have to use different copies because it's a must. We have a Nausea and a Shrivel. All creatures get -1/1 until end of turn. So this will help you with tokens and elves and whatnot. So that's kind of the list of the deck. There it is in a heap now, in a bubbling heap with the Bubbling Muck deck. It's my last deck that we added to the Pauper Battle Box, and is actually now one of my favorite decks that we have built. Again, I randomly stumbled across a list using the Bubbling Muck and thought it was built kind of poorly. It was creatureless, and it had, in my opinion, a lot of bad options for the deck, and this is kind of my version of the Bubbling Muck. Some things you can consider for this deck: Thorn to Black Rose, Gurmag Angler could definitely be in here. This deck is very low on creatures. I think if you're going to go the Gurmag Angler, though, that you cut the Liliana Shade and do the old switcheroo. Games 2 and 3, you bring in the Gurmag Angler when they take out all their creature removal, and then a 5/5 that delves easily can definitely take over the game quickly. There is another combo with Pestilence and a card out of Homelands that is a protection of black. It's Cemetery Gate, I believe is what it's called. I've had that in this deck before, and I just didn't find it necessary for the deck. You could even go cards like Chittering Rats if you want more of a tempo-based, or I wouldn't suggest going like the Crypt Rats. Crypt Rats, Crypt Rats could definitely be a card in this deck as well. You could put that in the sideboard instead of Shrivel, like Crypt Rats, because it's kind of like another X spell that can deal X damage to each creature and player. In fact, I might actually throw a Crypt Rats in here rather than like a Nausea or Shrivel. But as of now, I haven't worried about Crypt Rats in this particular deck. So there you have it. Again, a lot of people asked about the Pauper Battle Box. It's an incredibly fun thing to collect. We use it at our store. We can actually hold a 32-man tournament now with the decks here. You see some of the staples here, but you also see some non-staples, and I'll be showcasing these decks in the future. Eventually, we're going to get them all painted, like this Zombies deck here. Man, it's so tight I can barely... There you go, like Zach has painted some of these and put some artwork on them, and that's kind of cool for the customization of the Pauper Battle Box. So you can either have one modern deck, or you can have an entire collection of decks. And Pauper's a very, very fun format. I enjoy it. I think there's a lot of different ways to attack the format, as you can see here. There's actually one deck I don't have that's sitting out on the table because I just played a game with it, with Hulktron, and that equals 32. Again, we'll go on a list. Eventually, we'll have the entire list up on roguedeckbuilder.com. And if you're interested in this deck, feel free to go in and check our website. We'll have these up for sale. I can sign the cards. I can sleeve the cards, put them in a deck box. I can wrap it as a Christmas present. You name it, we can offer you a service to sell you this Pauper deck. Highly, highly, highly suggest you get into Pauper. I know that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. About last time this year is where the Pauper craze kind of took off and lasted till about February, March-ish, and it's kind of died down. And that's a sad thing, because I think this format is just so much fun. In fact, I had a kid come in today with a Boros deck, from a Boros standard deck, and was like, commons can't beat my deck. There's no way. And then I proceeded to beat him with almost all of the Pauper decks, rather than in that, it's a Boros deck. It's your typical Boros aggro list that's going around right now in standard. So do not underestimate the power of the commons. You have a heavy control deck based like this. You have extremely aggro decks based like goblins, and a bunch of these other ones are very, very aggro, like Mono White Heroic, elves, those type of things. And really, 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 really cannot encourage you to get in Pauper enough. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, we'll have the list up at Rogue Deck Builder, and you can come check it out. Thanks for watching.